If you're in a job and you have a toxic colleague or a toxic boss, if you can get away from them, if you can quit your job, if you can move to another part of the office, do it, because it's worth it. It's not worth collecting $10,000 extra a year with this boss, because it's going to damage you emotionally. It's going to take you years to recover. So if you can, quit the job. No job is worth that kind of abuse. It's going to hurt you. It's going to damage you. And the same in a relationship as well. If you can't get out, you have to develop a habit of detachment and not taking things personally. And oddly enough, when people sense that in you, like a toxic person senses that they can't push your buttons, it has a powerful effect on them. I'm not saying it's going to cure them, but they thrive on the ability to push your buttons. To see you getting upset and angry makes them so excited in a perverted way. We are in deep, deep denial of the fact that we are mortal creatures. And I believe that with that denial comes a great deal of latent anxiety in your life. It makes you anxious and fearful for a lot of little smaller things in life, which is why somebody who's had a near-death experience gets rid of that anxiety and doesn't have that kind of avoidant mentality. So I want to open up, we tend to turn our back towards death, and I want you to turn around and face it square in the eye every single day. It's not a negative thing. It's an immensely beautiful thing. I don't want to be one of those writers that writes a boring book. And stories, if you tell the story well, it's impossible to bore your audience. You tell it in a way where you kind of lure them in by not telling them where you're headed. There's going to be a surprise, a twist at the end. I'm going to tell you the lesson to be learned, and it's not necessarily what you think. The people you think are the people being conned in the game end up being the con artists. That's from the 48 Laws. So I'm going to surprise you. And by doing that, I lure the reader in slowly into my way of thinking, into my world. So now you're ready to consume a 600-page book with a lot of information, but it doesn't weigh you down, because I'm trying continually to entertain you and tell you stories. And stories are what keep the mind engaged. And I tell writers a lot of times, that's what you're missing in your book. Marcus Aurelius has this great quote about when you enter a boxing ring and people start punching you in the face, you don't whine and complain, say, why are you doing that? That's not fair, blah, blah, blah. That's part of the boxing ring. Well, part of being in Hollywood, part of being in the power game is people exploiting your labor. And it's how you respond. It's not by whining, complaining, getting bitter inside. It's by realizing that this is how it's played. How can I exploit the situation for my own good? How can I use this in the future and make it a positive experience? So the first thing we have to agree on here is you want the ability to influence people. You want the ability to persuade them, to be able to move them to some degree in your direction, to get them interested in your ideas, and to be honest with yourself that this is something that you want. The second thing you have to be aware of is that you're usually going at it from the wrong end. You're thinking first and foremost about yourself. This is the number one problem that afflicts humanity in the world today. We are all becoming so much more self-absorbed and so much more narcissistic. And a lot of it is understandable. We're spending so much time on our smartphones, in our virtual worlds, and not enough with other people and interacting with them and getting inside their spirit and their mentality.
Amor fati. Tell people what that means.
Well, it's a Latin expression that literally means love of fate. It was created by the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who's one of my great icons in life, one of my favorite writers. And what fate means, things happen to you you can't control. You didn't control who your parents are. You didn't control what city you were born into, what school you went into. You didn't control whether you were born rich or poor, right? There's much you can't control. That's fate. Accept it for what it is. Stop whining and stop going, I want something else. Embrace your world, your life.